A man named Robert, 71 years old, retired teacher, 2 stents already in his heart, sat across from his cardiologist and asked the one question he'd been afraid to ask for 3 years. Is there anything I can actually eat that helps? His cardiologist slid a piece of paper across the desk. 5 foods. That was it. 5 foods his doctor had been recommending to cardiac patients for over 20 years. Not instead of medication, not instead of exercise, but alongside everything else, as the part of heart health that most people never get told about clearly enough to act on. Robert told me. I felt stupid that nobody had just said it plainly before. I'm going to say it plainly now. Stay with me, because food number 4 is the one that surprises almost everyone. Most people have it in their kitchen right now and have no idea what it's doing for them. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel is about living well in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. Not just longer, better. Quick note before we start, I'm not a doctor. Nothing here is medical advice. Think of this as the most useful conversation you'll have today with a very well-informed friend. One who tells you what the research says and then tells you to go talk to your actual doctor about what it means for you specifically. Now, let's see. Here's something worth understanding before we get into the list. After 60, the relationship between what you eat and how your heart performs becomes more direct, not less. The margin shrinks. The things that your body used to quietly compensate for in your 40s start showing up more visibly in your blood work, your blood pressure, your energy levels. That's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to pay attention. And the encouraging part, the part Robert's cardiologist wanted him to understand, is that the same logic works in reverse. The foods that support heart health after 60 tend to work faster and more noticeably than they do in younger people, because the body is more responsive to what you give it. So this list matters more now than it would have 20 years ago. Keep that in mind as we go through it, because by the time we get to food number 5, I want you to understand not just what these foods are, but why this particular combination works the way it does. That's the piece most people miss. Food number 1, fatty fish. Salmon, mackerel, sardines, herring. The oily ones. The ones a lot of people skip because they're not sure how to cook them or they don't love the smell. Here's why they're at the top of this list. Fatty fish are one of the most concentrated natural sources of omega-3 fatty acids, and omega-3s have been studied more extensively for cardiovascular support than almost any other nutrient. The research consistently links regular fatty fish consumption to healthier triglyceride levels, better arterial flexibility, and reduced inflammation. 3 things that matter enormously for a heart that's been working for 6 or 7 decades. The amount that comes up most often in the research is 2 servings per week. Not every day, not a supplement. 2 actual meals. Now, if you genuinely can't stand salmon, sardines are worth a second look. They're cheaper, they're shelf-stable, they're mild when prepared right, and they carry essentially the same nutritional benefit. A tin of sardines on whole grain toast is one of the most heart-supportive lunches you can eat, and it takes 4 minutes. Robert's version. He hated fish his whole life. His cardiologist told him to try it once a week for a month before making up his mind. He now eats salmon every Sunday. He said, I stopped fighting it when my numbers started moving. Food number 2 is one almost everyone has heard is good for you, but very few people know the specific reason why, and that reason changes how you think about it entirely. Food 2, oats. Before I tell you about oats, I want you to think about what you ate for breakfast this morning. Just hold that thought for 10 seconds. Okay, here's why I asked. Oats contain a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. And beta-glucan does something remarkably specific inside your digestive system. It forms a thick gel that binds to cholesterol-containing bile acids and carries them out of the body before they can be reabsorbed. In plain language, oats actively help remove a form of cholesterol from your system every time you eat them. Not passively, actively. The research on this is consistent enough that it's one of the few food-based health claims the FDA has formally recognized that beta-glucan from oats, as part of a diet low in saturated fat, may reduce the risk of heart disease. Half a cup of dry oats gives you roughly 3 to 4 grams of beta-glucan. That's the amount that shows up most reliably in the research. The catch people run into Instant flavored oat packets are often loaded with added sugar, which works against everything the oats are trying to do. Plain rolled oats or steel-cut oats, dressed up however you want at home, are the version worth having. Robert's version. He adds blueberries and a small handful of walnuts. Which brings us to food number 3, and the reason that combination is smarter than it looks. Food number 3, berries. Blueberries especially, but also strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries. Here's what makes berries earn their place on a heart health list specifically, not just a general eat more fruit list. Berries are exceptionally high in a group of compounds called flavonoids, particularly anthocyanins, the pigments that give them their deep blue, red, and purple colors. Research has linked higher flavonoid intake to lower blood pressure, improved arterial function, and reduced oxidative stress on blood vessel walls. Oxidative stress is worth understanding briefly. It's essentially the wear and tear that accumulates on cells and blood vessels over time, and it's one of the underlying mechanisms in arterial hardening. The antioxidants in berries help slow that process. The practical upside: berries are one of the most forgiving items on this list. Frozen berries carry essentially the same nutritional value as fresh, and they're cheaper, available year-round, and easy to add to oats, yogurt, or a smoothie without any prep. Now, here's the combination I mentioned at the start of the video. Oats plus berries together is not a coincidence. The fiber from the oats and the antioxidants from the berries address two different mechanisms of cardiovascular stress simultaneously. When Robert, cardiologist, wrote down that breakfast combination, she wasn't being random. That pairing is deliberate. Food number 4 is coming up next, and this is the one I teased at the very beginning. The one most people already have and don't realize is working for them. I know, you were expecting something exotic, something you'd have to order online or find at a specialty store. It's garlic. Regular, ordinary, inexpensive garlic that's probably sitting in your kitchen right now. Here's why it made this list. Garlic contains a compound called allicin, released when garlic is crushed or chopped, that has been studied for its effects on blood pressure and arterial flexibility. A consistent body of research suggests that regular garlic consumption is associated with modest but meaningful reductions in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, particularly in people who already have elevated readings. For context, blood pressure is one of the primary modifiable risk factors for heart disease after 60. Even small, sustained reductions matter over time. The practical note: cooking garlic reduces allicin content, not to zero, but noticeably. Raw garlic, or garlic added near the end of cooking, retains more of the active compound. Garlic supplements exist and are studied, but the research on whole food garlic is more consistent and the cost is obviously far lower. Robert's cardiologist told him, add it to everything you already cook. It costs almost nothing, and it's not nothing. That's the standard we're working with on this list. Not miracle foods. Foods are not nothing. Consistently, affordably over time. One food left, and this one is the quietest overachiever on the entire list. Most people eat it occasionally. Almost nobody eats it often enough. Food number 5, leafy greens. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, arugula. Here's what makes leafy greens specifically valuable for heart health, not just general nutrition. Leafy greens are among the richest dietary sources of nitrates, not the processed kind found in cured meats, but natural nitrates that the body converts into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide relaxes and widens blood vessels, which supports healthy blood pressure and blood flow. They're also high in vitamin K1, which plays a role in preventing calcium from depositing in arterial walls, a process called arterial calcification that contributes to arterial stiffness over time. And they're high in folate, which helps regulate homocysteine, an amino acid that, when elevated, is associated with increased cardiovascular risk. 3 different mechanisms. 1 food group. The amount that shows up in the research is roughly 1 to 2 cups of leafy greens daily, which sounds like a lot until you realize that a large handful of spinach wilts down to almost nothing when cooked or disappears completely into a smoothie without changing the taste. I want to pause here for a second before the recap, because I think it's easy to watch a list like this and feel quietly overwhelmed. 5 things to add. 5 changes to make. A whole new way of eating to figure out. That's not what Robert did. And that's not what I'm suggesting. He picked 1. Oats for breakfast because it was the easiest swap. He did that for 3 weeks until it felt normal. Then he added berries. Then the fish on Sundays. Then garlic in everything he already cooked. The greens came last, tucked into soups and pasta sauces where he barely noticed them. 18 months later, his cardiologist used a word Robert hadn't heard in 3 years. Improvement. Not a cure. Not a miracle. Improvement. Steady, measurable, real. That's what this list is actually about. 5 foods. Let's run them back one more time. 1. Fatty fish. Salmon, sardines, mackerel. Twice a week. Omega-3s that support arterial health and reduce inflammation. 2. Oats. Plain rolled or steel cut. The beta-glucan fiber that actively helps clear cholesterol from your system. 3. Berries. Blueberries especially. Flavonoids that reduce oxidative stress on blood vessel walls and paired deliberately well with oats. 4. Garlic. Crushed or chopped. Added to food you already cook. Allicin that supports healthy blood pressure. 5. Leafy greens. Spinach, kale, chard. Nitrates, vitamin K1, folate. 3 different pathways to a healthier cardiovascular system in one food group. None of these replaces your medication. None of them replaces your doctor. But none of them is nothing. And over time, consistently, that matters more than any single dramatic change. Pick 1. Start there. If you have someone in your life who's been told to watch what they eat, but nobody's told them specifically what that means, send them this video. That vague instruction without a practical list is one of the most frustrating things patients describe leaving a doctor's office with. This is the practical list. If this helped you, hit the like button. It costs you nothing, and it helps this reach someone who needs it and hasn't found it yet. Subscribe if you haven't. Next week, we're covering the one breakfast mistake that spikes blood pressure before 9 a.m. It's something most people over 60 do every single morning without knowing it. We'll get into it next week. Take care of your heart. Robert did. You can too.